In this video, we are going to use the interest rate hedging spreadsheet to look at hedging forward starting loans with 3-month SOFR futures contracts. There will be a link in the notes for this video to an introduction to the spreadsheet. So I'm going to assume you have seen that or know how that works. The interest rate hedging spreadsheet, again, there's this ribbon which lets you do things in the spreadsheet. Now, we're going to go through a series of examples here of forward starting loans. And the first example is going to be for a $1 million loan. We're going to lend money, and we're going to line the dates up with one of the 3-month SOFR futures contracts. So let's just choose one. Let's say that June 2025 contract. I'm just going to check the dates. That June 25 is just a date. So let's just format it as a date. So 18th of June 2025, the compounding period on the SOFR futures contract is 90 days. So I'll add 90 to that date, and you've got 18th June 2025 to 16th September 2025. So we're going to create a forward starting loan. We're going to lend. So if we're lending here, it says a positive amount means we're borrowing. So if we're lending, it should be a negative. We're going to start that on June 18th, 2025, and we're going to end on September 16th, 2025. Now, actual for 360 basis, we're going to make this a fair loan. So I click on the fair forward rate, 3.96. I book the loan. You could see the spreadsheet update a little bit here. Forward starting loans has a 0 in it. And if I look for a second at the worksheet for forward starting loans, we can see the forward starting loan is booked into the spreadsheet. One comment on that 3.96, we have lined this up with a 3-month SOFR futures contract. And if I go look at the June, there's our market data, the June 3-month SOFR futures contract, the price is 96.04. And that gives us a rate of 3.96. So the rate underlying the SOFR futures contract is 3.96. The fair rate on the loan is also 3.96. So that's how these futures contracts works. That's how our yield curve works. I forgot to mention the value date for this particular yield curve is July 17th, 2024. So this loan that we're making is about a year into the future. I'm going to click on the Run Risk button. So this is calculating DV01s, and we're going to spend our time looking at the market input risk, which is changing the rates on the market inputs up by 1 basis point. So for the June 2025 SOFR futures contract, if the rate goes up by 1 basis point, the price of the futures contract goes down by 0.01. And we lose 23.68. Now, what the yield curve or what the risk report, run risk, is doing is it is changing this to 96.03. And we can see the $23.68. So basically, it's changing it. Let me change it back. It's changing every rate in the spreadsheet on these market data, in this market data, changing it all, making the rates go up by 1 basis point, finding the P&L, and telling us 23.68. Now, when we're thinking about hedging, we can look at the 3-month SOFR futures contracts in 2 ways. So one way to look at a SOFR futures contract is it makes or loses $25 per basis point. When we're thinking about hedging, we are losing $24 per basis point. So we need a hedge that makes $25 per basis point. The other thing to think about with the SOFR futures contract is that the price of the SOFR futures contract is 1 minus the rate. So if we are long a SOFR futures contract, we are going to lose money when rates go up, make money when rates go down. If we're short, it's the other way around. So one way to look at all this is SOFR futures contracts make or lose $25 per basis point. We are losing $25 approximately per basis point when rates go up. Therefore, we should go short one SOFR futures contract. Now, the other way to think about SOFR futures contracts is to say SOFR futures contracts, that $25 is aligned to $1 million of borrowing or lending for 90 days on the given date. So again, we are lending $1 million. We need to do a SOFR futures contract position, which effectively is locking in the borrowing rate for $1 million. Irrespective of how we think about it, we go to the SOFR futures. We're interested in June 2025. Again, going back, let's just think about the $25 version of the SOFR futures contract. We are losing approximately $25 per basis point. That means it's as if right now our position is we're long SOFR futures contracts, one of them. So I want to go short a SOFR futures contract. Let's book that into the spreadsheet. Again, no P&L shows up. If I look at my SOFR futures, I can see we've traded the June 2025 contract, short one of them, trade price 96.04, which is the fair price. Go back to the summary, run the risk, and we can see the risk is substantially gone. Again, the goal when hedging interest rates is not to make the risk zero. Typically, we can't do that, but it's to make the risk small. So here, we've lent money. We hedged by going short a SOFR futures contract, and the hedge seems to work. All right, let me go back. Example number 2. Again, whenever I start by hitting the clear trades, which gets all the positions out of the spreadsheet. I run risk. It's to make sure everything's out. The risk should be 0 everywhere, which it is, so I know my spreadsheet's empty. I'm going to do the same thing, but this time we're going to borrow. Again, if we were a bank, we're accepting a deposit. Set the dates up the same way, 6/18/2025 to 9/16/2025. Fair rate, 3.96. Book the loan. Run the risk. We can see everything's the same, but the risk has changed signs. Now we're making money when rates go up, so it's as if we are short a SOFR futures contract. The hedge, of course, is to go long one SOFR futures contract. Run the risk, and our risk has gone down to 0. Okay, the next trade. The next trade we can think about when we're doing this is, let's clear our trades, let's run the risk, make sure it's all empty. What happens if we're lending for a longer period of time? And let's say we're not lending $1 million, but let's make it some other number. So we're going to lend again this time, and this time I'm going to go to the 15th of December. So basically I'm covering approximately 2 SOFR futures contracts periods. So let's lend. Let's put $5 million into our lending. We're going to start on June 18th, 2025. We're going to end on December 15th, 2025. Again, now the rate's not quite as nice. 3.875231. We do the fair rate. You can see our present value is essentially 0. Book the loan in. We can look at that forward starting loan. There it is. Short $5 million. We're lending. Starts in June, ends in December, and so on. Let's run the risk. And what do we see? What we see is, first off, $1 million was about $25 per basis point, plus or minus. $5 million is pretty close to $125 basis points, plus or minus. So one thing, the size of these numbers is 5 times bigger, and that makes sense because our loan is 5 times bigger. Second, there's a little bit of risk elsewhere, but almost all of the risk appears in the June and September contract. And approximately the fair rate for lending or borrowing from June through December, 6 months, 180 days, is approximately the average of the rate for the 3 months starting in June plus the average of the rate for the 3 months starting in September. That's not an exact calculation, but it's pretty close, which is why the risk splits. And again, another way to think about it would be if I'm lending, I'm locking in a rate from June until December. That's pretty much equivalent to locking in a rate from June until September and then locking in another rate from September until December. So that's why the risk splits, and the risk is approximately 5 contracts for June and 5 contracts for September. So we're going to hedge. This position is as if I'm long SOFR futures contracts. I'm losing money when rates go up. So in order to hedge, I'm going to go short 5 of each. Run the risk. And not all, but most of the risk is gone. I'll do one last example here. Clear the trades, run the risk. Most loans, let's this time borrow money, $10 million, let's say. Most loans do not line up nicely with the SOFR futures contracts, right? If I am lending to a client in the future, they're not interested in the SOFR futures contracts. They're interested in their own business requirements. They're borrowing and lending for whatever period they want. So let's set our dates somewhat randomly. How about May 12th, 2025 to, and let's just go for a year. How about 12th, 2026? Okay. I'm going to go the fair rate just to make that work. I'm going to book the loan. I'm going to run the risk. Sorry, we're borrowing from clients making a deposit. I've set that backwards. Clients making a deposit. I've run the risk, and I look at my risks. For these middle months where the loan covers the entire period, the risks are approximately 10 contracts each, right? 10 contracts is $250. This is $241. So we're pretty close to 10 contracts each. So basically, if the lending happens over an entire SOFR futures compounding period, then we get the risks that we expect. If it happens over part of a SOFR futures contract compounding period, we get some of the risk. Not all of it. Again, if we think about this starting point and this ending point, they add up to about $250. But some of it's in this contract because the contract starts May 12th, so that overlaps part of the March contract. And some of it ends up in this contract because it ends May 12th, 2026, and so that overlaps about 2/3 of this contract. The hedge, again, we're making money when rates go up, so it's as if we're short SOFR futures contracts. And the hedge, of course, is, we can just read off of this. This one's about, we want to go long about 4, 10, 10, 10, and then that last one is about 6. Right? So this is close to 100. These are close to 250. 250 divided by 25 is 10. This one's close to 150. 150 divided by 25 is 6. So those are our futures. We book all those contracts. We run the risk. And we can see we've substantially reduced our risk. Now, again, if I add all these things up, we're sort of short. Sorry, So if I add up everything for a second, we look down here at the bottom, the sum is about negative $33. In theory, we could, if we chose, go short one more contract somewhere, maybe that March 2025, and that would balance out the risk. It would reduce the overall risk. It would reduce our risk to some sort of parallel shift to the yield curve, which is a reasonable risk, and so we might want to do that. I hope that was a helpful video. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. That's how we're going to use this spreadsheet.